Hi, this is Dr. Stone. I wanted to briefly introduce this video. I'm about to show you a graphical representation of your cycle, and including the 7 critical components for fertility and how each of those components can be disrupted by a variety of different ways, and how that can lead to your experience of infertility and or miscarriage. Addressing these 7 factors and all the body systems that can impact these factors is a guaranteed way to achieve pregnancy. Let me show you how it works.
So this is our graphical representation of the female cycle, of your cycle, and we have the 7 critical components here. What has to happen in order for your body to be ready for fertilization, for a baby to happen, for pregnancy to happen. These 7 steps must happen, and they are functional steps. In fact, this goes a level deeper than in order to ovulate. So medicine looks at it, you're not ovulating, that's the problem. Well, what has to happen in order for you to ovulate? You're not implanting, that's the problem. Well, what has to happen for you to implant and be able to sustain that implantation and nourish that baby? So let's start from number 7 here, just because it makes more sense like that. So at the end of your cycle, with the lack of fertilization, your hormones drop. That initiates the process of menstruation. Following menstruation, the hormones are still low, and that low level of hormones for a few days triggers your pituitary gland to start to release follicle-stimulating hormone. And when follicle-stimulating hormone gets to a certain level, that trips the switch for the next step, and that's to increase your estrogen. So when it starts to climb, all of a sudden your estrogen starts to climb. It's literally like a domino effect that has to happen. When this hits a peak, again, a certain level in your body, the pituitary gland is signaled again, and this luteinizing hormone up here is released, and it surges, which means that it rapidly rises. And that causes your ovulation. There's your ovulation right there. So you have to have low hormones, pituitary working, ovaries releasing estrogen, and then the pituitary kicking in for another hormone before you get ovulation. Luteinizing hormone then causes a surge in progesterone, and that readies the inside of your uterus for implantation. So we need that progesterone. And then we have fertilization and implantation. And if that is accomplished, the hormones then, instead of dropping off, go up and up and up. So that's how it's supposed to work. And any disruption in any of these steps is going to cause it to not work, and that's the problem that you're experiencing. So let's see what goes wrong. So let's go back to this end here, and I actually have them labeled a little bit differently. So these are the 5 causes. So we have a failure to metabolize, which means that your body does not decrease the hormones naturally. So how does it go down? Well, number 1, it stops producing, and the liver and the gallbladder and the kidneys then are releasing and removing that. And that's detoxification, basically. I know you might have a doctor say that's kind of some alternative, crazy thing, but we detoxify every hormone that we make, every chemical that we breathe and absorb, and this is the process. So, and that's why I say this just means we're toxic. Now, the reasons why these 3 detox processes, methylation, glucuronic acid, and sulfur binding, so those are just big names to things that bind your estrogen and progesterone and take it out of your system. The reasons those get disrupted are stress systems, so that's your adrenal glands, blood sugar, that's your pancreas, and inflammation, which could be your immune system, it could be your diet, it could be your liver, or it could be other metabolic causes like homocysteine. We'll get into that. So don't shut down. This is too important to not listen, even if you're not following everything. There's a learning curve that goes on here because previous education is, hey, you're not ovulating, you're infertile, so we have to force your body to ovulate. Well, this is a much gentler and a more intelligent way of looking at this. How does this work? How do you ovulate? And then let's make that work for you. So don't get shut off by the big words. This will come together for you. I promise you that. So the failure for those hormones to go down. Now, if you do not decrease your hormones at the end of the cycle, there's no signal to the pituitary for your follicle-stimulating hormones to go up. So then we lack that release of follicle-stimulating hormone. So low, if it's not low, we don't get this step. Now, if this step doesn't happen independent of this goes, so let's say this does go low when we run because we run these panels. This is actually how we do our diagnostics. We do a 30-day or a 28-day panel where we're measuring all of these hormones and looking for these patterns, because this is what has to happen. So you probably have never even heard of that, I'm going to guess. I'm not saying that you might not have come across a doctor who is that in depth, but this is a test that we do that is really diagnostic for all these problems. So again, back to number 2, if this is low and this doesn't happen, let's say we don't see a follicle-stimulating hormone release, this is your main pituitary suppressor up here, insulin and cortisol. So this is your adrenals and your pancreas again. So one of the things that, or two of the things that mess up the liver also suppress the pituitary. If we lack the estrogen release, it may be because you didn't get step 2. So you never got step 2, and maybe you didn't get step 2 because you never got step 1, which is the lowering of the hormone. But if you have the lowering and you have the release of FSH, but you don't have this peak of estrogen, then we go down to this box, the suppression of the gonads, the ovaries, and this is true in males too. It's a different type of, it's not a cyclic type of thing, but as far as the hormone releases and things like that, the same types of suppression happen. And so if we're treating male infertility, we're still looking at these same underlying causes. So we're looking at immune, your diet, your liver, and your metabolic. Inflammation. If you don't have an estrogen release, then nothing is going to signal your pituitary to surge luteinizing hormone. But let's say you did get a surge of estrogen, and you still didn't get that. Well, again, we're looking at these pituitary suppressors here. We got to look at your insulin system and your cortisol system, and also look at the testosterone. With luteinizing hormone in women, we have an increase in testosterone, and this is the number one cause of infertility per medical research is polycystic ovaries, and the cause of that is this lack or too much insulin, too little luteinizing hormone, and too much testosterone. All those things can be treated naturally. So that's the triad of PCOS. So we can handle those things. If the luteinizing hormone doesn't work, well, you're not going to get that surge of progesterone. So even if you did happen to have the estrogen and you somehow got an ovulation and the luteinizing hormone was suppressed because of insulin, you're not going to get that progesterone surge. So implantation's not going to work for you. So that's where you get your miscarriages. But let's say that luteinizing hormone did surge and still you didn't get that lack of progesterone. Now we go back here. What are the suppressors of ovarian function or testicular function? And that's inflammation, your immune system, liver, metabolic things. And then we're back at the end, since we started at the end. If you don't get a surge of progesterone, it doesn't signal your body to, shut down in terms of getting rid of these hormones. So rewind this and go back. I know this is a pretty complex process by comparison to you don't ovulate, take this drug. But I guarantee you that your health is going to benefit from understanding this process so that you can really trust us to put it back on track, so we can measure these things for you and give you a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby. Not saying that you won't, absolutely, but by treating you from a health perspective, I think your risks are vastly decreased. So, again, just a quick review here. Your hormones have to drop at the end of your cycle. That drop initiates the follicle-stimulating hormone to release. Follicle-stimulating hormone initiates estrogen to climb. The climb of estrogen initiates a surge of luteinizing hormone. That is where you ovulate. The ovulation causes a surge in progesterone. That readies the uterus. And fertilization and implantation cause the hormones to continue to rise rather than to drop off. So, again, review, make sure you've got this. Email me any questions, and call. We're here to help you through this process. Thanks for listening.